Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I am 5 minutes late.
No worries. So the meeting is now starting and it's live. So go ahead, Commissioner London.
All right, I'm going to call to order the meeting now. I want to welcome everyone to the Environmental Quality Commission's February 25th meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with EQC members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. So first, I'd like to introduce the staff and EQC members present. We have Commissioners Gaylord, Cabot, Martin, Payne, and then Chair Price is not yet here. And staff include Rebecca Lucky, the Sustainability Manager. Rebecca, would you please provide instructions to the EQC and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Vice Chair London and members of the Environmental Quality Commission. Welcome everyone to the February 25th EQC meeting, and thank you for attending. At this time, we ask the members of the EQC to please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You can control your own webcams and microphones, and staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and to respond to you, members of the EQC. And for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on an item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature, which is next to your name in the participants list. And I'll have the ability to open your microphone, and then you can provide your comment to the EQC. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll now go to the public comment section. So under public comment, the public may address the EQC on any subject not listed on the agenda, and each speaker may address the EQC once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. If you wish to do so, please clearly state your name and your address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The EQC cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the EQC cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. The floor is now open for public comment. Ms. Lucky, do we have any public comment on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Vice Chair London. So at this time, if any member in attendance wishes to speak on a non-agenda item, you may raise your hand and I will be able to unmute your microphone. I'll let you know once I've been able to do that. And with that, I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to regular business. So under regular business, the EQC considers providing advice to City Council on sustainability policy matters or administrative actions that require City Council decision. Our first item, D1, is to approve the minutes. And as we do that, I will put out the question, are there any clarifying questions from the EQC before taking public comment?
I have a clarifying question. I think it's clarifying. Rebecca, on the minutes for the December meeting, I was wondering, can we add the work plan, the revised work plan? So there was like two drafts or whatever, and then I incorporated the comments from the commission and sent that to you. And I was wondering, can we include that as an attachment?
So the final work plan was approved in January, and I can, let me check with the city clerk on that.
Am I mixing meetings?
Maybe
am
not.
I mixing meetings?
Hold on. Well, you feel free to go to public comments and I'll look that up just to make sure. But I think there's ways to address that.
Okay, great.
I have a clarifying question as well, I think. It says we're also, amongst the minutes we're approving are the January 20th, 2021 minutes, but I didn't see them in the attachment. Were they there for other people? They just didn't load for me?
No, I didn't see them either.
Okay.
I have October, November, and December.
Okay, yeah, same.
Okay. Then you can't approve that one tonight. I'll have to bring that back to the EQC for next month. Apologies on that.
All right, anything else? Okay, And let me just back up. I did not introduce our very important staff member, Candace Almondrell. So that's Candace, welcome. All right, and so now the floor is open for public comment on this agenda item. Rebecca, do we have any public comment?
So at this time, if there's any member in attendance that would like to provide public comment, please engage with the raised hand feature next to your name in the participant box, and I'll have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the EQC. And with that, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, public comment is now closed and open for EQC discussion. Is there any further discussion?
So the only thing I had was this whole question of the work plan, and I don't, if I'm confusing meetings and we finalize the work plan in January, then I'm fine when we get the January minutes if that goes into January, but I kind of thought it was December. Am I, Leah or Tom? Anyone remember when was it our last meeting and the meeting before that we finalized the work plan?
My memory's shot.
Shot. It was January.
Yeah, I can confirm that it was January.
It was January? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So Rebecca, when you bring the January minutes, can you attach the revised work plan?
Yes, I did have them prepared. I'm not sure how they didn't make it into the agenda. I apologize for that again, but it is attached to the January minutes.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. I move. I don't have any more discussion, and I can move. Okay. So go ahead, James. Sorry.
That's all right. I just have one small edit on the December 16th, 2020 minutes. I'm not listed as present, but I was present for that meeting. So we could revise it, but
that's important.
Yeah, but I didn't see anything else that needed modification.
All right. If there's no further discussion, Rebecca, can you please state the motion?
So I have Commissioner Gellard as motioning. I didn't catch who seconded the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. So motion by Gellard and seconded by Payne to approve of the October, November, and December minutes and to bring back the January minutes in March for final approval because they were not attached to the agenda, and to include Commissioner Payne as present for December 16th, 2020 meeting.
Okay, and I'll just note that Chair Price has arrived. Chair Price, do you need a moment to collect yourself before you jump in and take over? And would you like
sure.
to wait and
maybe
see
after
where
this?
We are? Okay.
Yes, after this item, is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we do all in favor and do a show of hands, or do we need to call the roll?
Yes, I do need to do a voice roll call. So Commissioner London?
Yes.
Commissioner Gellard?
Yes.
Commissioner Cabot?
Yes.
Commissioner Payne?
Yes.
Commissioner Elkins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Martin?
Yes, and do we get to include James's cat? Because I think the cat is
Yes, it's definitely a raised tail.
Yeah.
It's a raised tail, so just wanted to acknowledge.
I hope you don't mind she's sitting in. She's passionate about environmental policy.
I love the tail.
Awesome.
She's got lots of opinions.
Okay, Chair Price, would you like to take over starting with item D2, or would you like me to continue?
I can take over, or you can continue. If you're on a roll, feel free to continue.
I do not feel like I'm on a roll, but yeah, so I think I will hand it over to you. We're currently at item D2, which is cap item number 2.
So we're introducing item number.
I lost audio. Did anyone else lose Brian?
Yeah, I did too.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just heard you. Say something, Ryan. Oh, going in and out. It's like you have a bad connection or something.
Hold on.
I heard you now.
Oh, now you can hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I think something happened to my headphones, but I don't know what it was. So I think we're on item C2.
I believe it's a D2.
Oh, D2. So provide a recommendation to the City Council for implementation of the Climate Action Plan Strategy number 3. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So we have an attachment. Was somebody going to present this, or
Yes.
Ms. Lucky?
So,
okay.
yes. So I'd like to introduce Candace Almendrell. She's been working on CAP action number 3, so EV infrastructure charging, increasing that for multifamily and commercial. And she'll be providing the EQC a brief presentation. And then you can, if you have any questions, public comment, we can have that afterwards. So with that, thank you, Candace.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, council member. Commissioners, environmental quality commissioners. So can you please just acknowledge that you can see my screen okay?
Yes.
We can see.
Thank you. So we're going to be discussing CAP strategy number 3, which is the expansion of access to electric vehicle charging infrastructure. It's one of 3 adopted strategies in the 2030 Climate Action Plan. Okay. So just a teensy bit of background about the strategy. So the gap analysis was completed last fall, and we presented our results to the Environmental Quality Commission and City Council. The major finding from the analysis was that less than 2.5% of multifamily properties in the city of Menlo Park have access to charging within a quarter mile of their residence, which is pretty significant. Access to charging is a huge factor in EV adoption, which is climate action strategy number 2, the increased adoption of electric vehicles and the decrease of gasoline use. As you can see in the graphic to the right, home charging is the base of the charging preference pyramid, for lack of a better term. It is a huge assumption that people make when they generate EV adoption rates and goals. So it's really big to get to those existing multifamily properties. It also meaningfully increases equity just because of the long charge times. Even the fastest charging takes almost an hour, which is a huge chunk of time if you have to go more than a quarter mile from your home and then wait. It also costs more when you charge at public charging stations versus at home, where you can pay residential and or even special electric vehicle charging rates. It also decreases charge and or drive time. If you have to leave your residence to charge your car, it increases the chances that you're going to take your car to places that you may have other ways to get to. You may be able to take the train to work or walk to the grocery store, and you would otherwise employ those modes that would reduce vehicle miles traveled, but you have to charge your car. So it's just keeping people in their vehicles, which is in direct conflict with climate action strategy number 4, which is reducing VMT over the city. As you know, and welcome Commissioner Elkins, the Environmental Quality Commission did review this analysis and provide some recommendations that we brought to council last fall. They agreed with our major finding you agreed with our major finding, and you decided to focus on the expansion of on-site charging for existing multifamilies to achieve that carbon neutral goal in the next 9 years, and also to address those long-term equity issues that were identified. You suggested that a combination of requirements, that would be like a policy, education, and incentives would be the best way to approach this. And you wanted to focus on the increase of level 1, which is just the regular household plug charging, and level 2, which are those charging stations that we kind of commonly see and think of as public charging stations, where feasible. And feasible has to do with handicap and accessibility issues and a potential loss of parking at those existing multifamily properties. So we brought this to council, and we recommended that we explore some various policy requirements like a reach code or a time of sale requirement that could help motivate people to take advantage of these incentives that are now available, especially for level 1 charging, in order to achieve that 2030 goal. This also kind of aligned with the work that the Sustainability Division has been doing in existing building electrification. So there was some kind of workflow efficiency there. Unfortunately, the city did not approve the mid-year budget request to complete the policy analysis, and staff has been redirected to kind of implement this strategy for the remainder of this fiscal year, calendar year really, to really help promote those incentives that have become available through Cali VIP, Pacific Clean Energy, and also the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Sorry, that's always a mouthful and I mess it up. So they also recommended this in response to a recently adopted state policy. I'm sure many of you know and have been following this very closely. Governor Newsom just announced last September really, that the state of California will sell only all their new vehicle sales by 2035 will be all zero emissions. So that's electric, hydrogen. Those are the only two I can think of right now, but it doesn't limit it to electric vehicles, but that's what makes the most sense in our community. So that's what we'll be talking about with reference to this executive order. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of pieces from the executive order that maybe you have missed if you didn't read the entire long document. But the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz, just released their California Zero Emissions Vehicle Market Development Strategy. So I've been reviewing that just to kind of see how they're going to hopefully align to capture not only the new vehicle market, which is explicitly stated in their goals, but also the used market and what that might look like. Also this July, we have to look forward to the California State Transportation Agency in coordination with some other agencies to identify the near-term actions, especially investment strategies, which could impact what our work for the remaining calendar year. As I stated, the goal that really kind of pops in the main thrust of this policy is the 2030 100% new in-state light-duty car sales to be zero emissions. 2045, they're hoping to transition all the medium and heavy duties. That's like delivery trucks and work trucks, construction vehicles, things that are larger that maybe we see a lot more frequently, but we don't think of as a light duty vehicle. They're targeting 2045, but they've got that caveat of where feasible. So that's something to kind of keep in mind, especially with the post office awarding that federal contract. So just to kind of give you an overview of the funding and incentives that are available, there's two agencies that are actively accepting applications. The first is Peninsula Clean Energy. So this agency represents two distinct funding pools. There's the Cali VIP funds, which are state funds that are targeted more towards commercial and public charging development. So that's the larger chunk, that's the $20 million, and it's currently oversubscribed. I think all of the funds were provisionally reserved within like 7 minutes of the application being open. So it was really like highly competitive. PCE, when they were developing their rollout of the Cali VIP funds, identified that critical market segment we're talking about of the multifamily properties and how they needed kind of a little bit more of a leg up. So they've set aside $4 million in funds to really kind of hopefully help them and target more level 1 charging. Their technical assistance program is still open. They're still trying to direct all the applicants that were unfortunately unable to get those funds for Cali VIP provisionally reserved to other funding sources. There's an outline of what those incentives would look like in application, and they anticipate those level 1 incentives to be enough to cover the cost And their level 2 incentives can cover up to 75% because those are the rules of the Cali VIP funds. So the other funding available, the other incentive available is through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. It's $6 million in funds. The level 1 incentive is slightly less. It's $1,500 per connector. The level 2 is slightly more. It can be up to $7,000 per connector, but like the Cali VIP funds, it will only cover up to 75% of the total project costs. The very interesting thing about the Bay Area Air Quality Management District incentive, the charge program this year, is that they're actually doing a competitive evaluation of all applications. They're reviewing them all, they're gathering them all, and once they're compiled, they're reviewing them case by case, scoring them and ranking them. So it's not a first come, first served situation, which could benefit a multifamily property a lot. Not only because multifamily property sites are among those that will be prioritized and probably scored a little higher, but also the Cali VIP funds, for example, the early applications were heavily dominated by the electric vehicle charging service providers like EVgo and ChargePoint, because they kind of have an idea of how to get the applications work out, and they can jump on them a little bit more readily than the average property owner. So some considerations to make about these incentives that are available. All these incentives are regional, nothing is specific to Menlo Park. The Cali VIP incentive, for example, is available to 5 local utilities. That's including Palo Alto, San Jose Clean Energy, in addition to Peninsula Clean Energy. And then that means all of their customers. That's who our multifamily property owners are potentially competing with. The PCE incentives are obviously available to all of their customers, which is the entirety of the San Mateo County, all of the cities and towns and the county itself. And then the Bay Area Air Quality Management District incentives are available to 9 Bay Area counties. So while $20 million, $4 million, $6 million may seem like a lot of funds and a lot of money, when we think about the representative population and property owners in Menlo Park, even if they were to all apply for it, they'd be competing with a large application pool. And just for a frame of reference, the estimated population of San Mateo County is like 760,000 people. The Menlo Park population is about 35,000. So that's around 4.5% of the total San Mateo County population. So 4.5% of the $4 million in funds from Peninsula Clean Energy is about $180,000. So that's just kind of to give you a frame, and when you think about the competition that our property owners are kind of dealing with. Also, these incentives are slowly transitioning and trying to capture these multifamily properties. They've been identified as a total critical market segment. Everybody understands that at-home charging is incredibly necessary to not only provide equity for these residents, but also to spur the electric vehicle adoption rates that we need to not only support the executive order of the governor, but also all of our climate goals. They just don't know how to capture this critical market segment, and they struggle to increase this property owner participation, and we're still trying to crack that nut. So we're trying to kind of refocus and think about the property owners that are really going to need the funds. So we just kind of have edited down the total analysis and instead of including all of the properties in addition to the condominiums that are in the city of Menlo Park, this is just an amended list of all the properties that are 4 or larger, just because the assumption is that they have more shared parking that is further or not connected to their units or the property itself. So this is just to kind of give you a frame of reference that it's still quite large. I think this represents something like 73% of the total multifamily properties in the city of Menlo Park, and that is including the condos. So that's about a little over 30% of all the housing units in the city. So it's still a significant chunk. So even if we look at those larger properties. And just some other considerations for the EV charging infrastructure at these existing properties. If we look at just the sites where it's 4 or more units, and we assume, sorry, I'm gonna go back a slide, and we assume for every unit there is at least 1 parking space. And based on PCE's estimation that $2,000 is approximately the cost of level 1 charging, this means we would need approximately $8.7 million to install level 1 charging at all existing multifamily properties with units 4 or more. This is not including any panel upgrades or transformer upgrades or any other kind of costs that you may incur, like parking or accessibility issues that you might kind of come across. And as you can see, the estimated cost far exceeds the available incentives that PCE is offering and BACMed is really offering. Like I said, that $20 million from Cali VIP has already been provisionally reserved. So these incentives alone will definitely not cover the full transition that we need to accomplish not only CAP strategy number 3, but 2, and I think to some extent 4. So that's just another consideration to make. We will definitely keep on monitoring these incentives. It's very much in line with California. I know that the California Air Resources Board is trying to improve their not only monitoring, but kind of compiling and report of all of these so that we can all align our climate goals and really make sure that these funds are going where they're needed to service the critical market statements and move the market as fast as possible, as quick as possible. So our recommendation that we're going to bring to council in the coming months is that we're going to monitor the state of the market development and investment strategy development and implementation that'll be coming through the state under EO 79-2020, EON 79-2020, always forget his initial. And then provide as much local outreach and for these statewide efforts to the maximum extent possible with current staff capacity and communication mediums. We're also going to monitor the continued application and implementation of not only PCE's Cali VIP funds, but their own individual $4 million bucket and BACMed's incentive programs as well. We're going to amplify those incentive program marketing efforts to the maximum extent possible using the existing communication mediums with current staff capacity. And we're going to report the efficacy and progress of these efforts in early 2022 to inform next steps. If there in fact needs to be next steps, or if we have great news, these are working beautifully. So with that, I'd like to thank you and invite you to ask any questions.
Thank you, Candace. Did any of the commissioners have clarifying questions for Candace about the presentation before we invite public comment? And I can't see anybody, so if you do, you should probably just unmute and speak.
Okay, I saw Josie does, and I do.
Go ahead, Janelle.
Okay, so on the cost estimates for of the $8.7 million, I just wonder if that takes into account potential economies of scale when you're adding level 1 charging at an apartment, and does it consider that, you know, I know the $2,000 is kind of this ballpark estimate, but I wonder if there are economies and cheaper prices if the panel is closer to the parking spot, or you're just going to trench one time as opposed to trenching separately for every single parking spot, that sort of thing.
So I can only speak, sorry, Rebecca, I didn't mean to step on you.
Oh no, you go ahead. Go.
Okay, I can only speak so far because these are Peninsula Clean Energy cost estimates. But from my understanding, it's a rough estimate kind of to capture not only the economy of scales, but also kind of the less attractive, more trenching further from the panel projects to really get a rough estimate for a per connector cost, like citywide, region-wide, project-wide. They're not trying to present the best case scenario. They really tried to capture a range there. So not every connector is going to cost $2,000. Some might cost more, but some they're hoping are going to cost less, so that it'll all rough out to be about that cost. So that's why I use that number to kind of estimate.
Thank you. I just in a quick search on the internet, I saw that energy.gov says the price would be $300 to $1,500 for level 1. But I don't know if that's for multi-unit dwellings.
Just another point, and again, I don't want to speak too out of turn, because again, these are Peninsula Clean Energy estimates, but they did do a characterization study of all of San Mateo County's existing multifamily properties. And it could be that they aimed slightly higher based on size of an average property, or average age, or maybe from case studies that they did. But I know that it's more tailored to our region. So that's just a consideration to make when you're comparing prices.
Thanks.
So one clarifying question I had was on the PCE 4 million that was sort of carved out specifically for multifamily. I know you said that the 20 million went within 15 minutes or 7 minutes or something, but what about the 4 million? Is that also totally gone?
So it's to service critical markets segments, including multifamily, but not limited to. I just want to make that little bit of a clarification. Okay. They are still compiling their applications, so they didn't have program specific information on that fund source. But we are following it closely, and we're hoping to give you more up-to-date information as soon as we receive it.
Okay, so I think I understand from what you just said that there may be money left, but they don't know yet.
Yes, that's correct. And I think that they're still going through all of the Cali VAP applications and trying to kind of cull out possible project applicants that could be serviced by this program. And they're still receiving technical assistance. Well, I'm not sure if they're still receiving technical assistance program applications, but the technical assistance program is still open, and those would be potential applicants to that program as well. So like I said, they're still kind of going through all of the applications and looking at all these different lines of communication to make sure that they're kind of servicing people first come, first serve as best they can.
Okay, and then on your slide where you showed sort of all the units in Menlo Park broken out by fourplexes and that one, do I remember correctly that when you did your analysis, you didn't actually speak to every building owner and get an inventory of what was on site? You had like a sample.
That's correct.
So there could be more chargers actually in those places, but because we didn't actually speak to every single one of them, you know, there's a question mark there, correct? That's
correct. I did not speak to the potentially 451 unique property owners that the list that I showed you represents, nor did I call all 746 individual sites. I reached out to, I believe, a little over 20, and I think, sorry, I'm struggling. I believe 7 or 8 responded and provided responses. We focused on larger properties, and then we tried to do a sample of kind of mid-sized 4plexes, 3plexes. I did try to call a few property owners that were identified as owning 2plexes. It was really difficult because the GIS and county information only provides the property owner's name, and I had to scrub and try to find their phone numbers or emails or any other kind of contact information. So we tried to capture a significant or statistically significant sample, but based on the study, the length of the study, and kind of the responses that we were getting that were tepid, if at all, we kind of focused on a more kind of data focused analysis. I did see that you provided that Clean Technica survey results. And I'm just I reached out to them to try to understand like what their sample size was, what areas they were kind of surveying, because it was unclear in the survey. I also was trying to understand if it was like an open-ended survey or if it was a survey where they kind of filled out option A, option B, option C. That was unclear in the survey results. So I did kind of reach out to them to see if they could give me any more information about it.
And just to clarify too, I mean, what we do know is how many level 2 chargers are on properties. We don't know the amount of level 1s.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So you know exactly how many level 2s are on each one because they had to get a permit, is that right?
They have to get a permit, and if it's also reported to, sorry, I'm struggling with the federal agency's name. It's the National Research Energy Laboratory that works under the, I will think of the agency name and I will get back to you.
NREL, maybe it's NREL, part of DOE.
Yeah, the National Research Energy Laboratory is the implementation of another agency. So that's not actually an agency, that's like the nonprofit that works for them. So I was trying to think of the agency name, but it is the NREL data.
Okay, National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
Damn it, thank you, sorry.
Okay, that's okay, part of DOE. Okay, all right. I think that's it for me for clarifying questions. I have other stuff, but it can come after public comment.
Thank you. Are there any other any other clarifying questions? Janelle? Yes. Oh, and Deb.
Right, I'm not sure if this is a clarifying question, but Candace, I just wonder if there's anywhere where you posted like when you made these calls, did you follow a script or what? I'm just trying to understand how the process went.
Thank you for asking. So unfortunately, it wasn't kind of a list survey, I believe they call it, where I had presupposed answers. I did more of like a anthropological interview where I tried to engage them as much as possible so that they share as much information as possible. That's why my responses that I provided, or the responses that were provided, were a little bit more amorphous.
Okay, and is that recorded somewhere that we can see like what the responses were?
I did not record my phone calls, but I recorded the responses. Is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking, yeah.
Okay, yes.
I mean, in writing, not in audio, yeah.
Yes, I have those notes.
Okay, and so is that something that can be shared?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And Commissioner Martin?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I was raising my hand or trying to bat off my puppy who I'm trying to babysit. Oh. But one thing, I mean, I guess, yeah, so if you see me kind of, I'm babysitting.
That's okay.
I don't know what he's doing right now, but he's ripping something apart. But anyway, one thing I guess I just want to make sure I understand. I thought I heard so I understand those incentive programs. And I thought I heard you saying you're going to try to promote the incentive programs. I'm really not sure I understand the connection of what we're trying to do. Are we trying to promote multifamily business owners to apply for those incentives, or what's the conduit? I must have missed that somehow. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Commissioner Martin. So it would be to amplify the marketing efforts that are currently underway from Peninsula Clean Energy and Back Mid Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And I mean, they're developing material, pretty rapidly. And so what we do is basically take that information because it's already been curated, and we'll, post it through our mediums like the digest, the weekly digest items that we have on Nextdoor, if that's applicable. We do that with other areas of marketing. So that's what we really mean within existing staff capacity. Because again, Peninsula Clean Energy is, putting a lot of resources and funds behind marketing these programs.
Yes, Commissioner Martin.
So just one last question. So I think what I heard you say is that you proposed to council a certain dollar amount, which I thought it was, I can't remember what that was. And they said, no, we'd rather you know mid-year, maybe later part of 2021, as I thought that's what I heard, and that they'd rather you focus on promoting incentive programs. But could you just kind of, again,
so can I can understand where Deb's confused. Can I jump in? Okay. So Rebecca wanted to do a policy, was recommending that the council approve budget to develop a policy similar to the burnout ordinance, but for multifamily buildings. And what my understanding is that council said, no, we're not ready to spend $150,000 on a policy for this action right now. We'd rather, since there's money available and this new executive order from the governor, let's try to do voluntary measures. And can we get staff focused on promoting voluntary measures as opposed to right now spending money on a policy? Does that make sense, Deb?
That's very helpful. Thank you. I didn't draw that connection. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cabot.
Yes, Candace, I was wondering if you could clarify for me the status of the $4 million set-aside program that could also be applicable to the multifamily. And what I mean by status is, the first step I can think of is an entity announces they will do an offering of a program. And the second thing is the offering opens up and people may apply. A third thing is the offering closes and they are no longer accepting applications. After that, they're evaluating applications. And at some point they announce they're totally full. I couldn't tell where they are along the process in that $4 million offering.
Well, that makes two of us, Tom. Sorry, Commissioner Cabot. From what I understand, the Peninsula Clean Energy, that $4 million that they've kind of earmarked for those critical segments, they're accepting applications in tandem with the Cali VIP funds. And while all of the Cali VIP funds have been reserved because there are very specific requirements, I think that I am under the impression, and that's what's been communicated to me from Peninsula Clean Energy, that there is some more evaluation required to allocate that $4 million or provisionally reserve it, similar to the Cali VIP funds. I wish I could provide you with more specific details, but it's a little bit unclear for me.
Okay.
And I am pursuing more kind of detailed information related to that. It was unclear to me if all of the funds that were provisionally reserved included that $4 million that they've earmarked for those critical market segments, or if they're holding that back. Again, my understanding is that when the Cali VIP application opened, they opened application for that program as well. And they're trying to kind of evaluate all of the applications that have come through Cali VIP and try to kind of get people to adjust and kind of swing over and focus on these PCE funds that could service them better. Or, capture the applicants that are still applying or were unable to provisionally reserve their Cali VIP funds.
All right, thank you. So it seems like it's a Schrodinger's grant. It's either open or not open.
A little bit. I think that it was really designed to kind of capture that critical market segment, but they're having trouble trying to kind of differentiate the two. Maybe intentionally, they were trying to have one applicant pool to maybe allocate the funds more efficiently. Okay. Again, there's only so much information I can get from them to report to you.
Thank you. Are there any other clarifying questions before we go to public comment? I don't see any hands raised. So, Ms. Lucky, do we have any public comments on this item at this time?
Thank you, Chair Price. So at this time, if there's any member of the public who's in attendance who would like to make public comment on this item, please raise your hand, which is the feature next to your name in their participants list, and I'll be able to unmute your microphone so that you'll be able to provide your public comment to the Environmental Quality Commission. And with that, I am looking to see if there are any hands raised, and I do not see any at this time. So I return the meeting back to you, Chair Price. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we can turn the meeting over to discussion amongst the EQC commissioners. Does somebody want to open up the discussion?
Tom's got his hand raised.
Oh, Tom, go ahead. Thanks, Josie.
Thank you. So my understanding of what the council was asking for was similar to what Candace mentioned in the report. That was that staff pursue ways to assist the multifamily property owners in becoming aware and in pursuing the available funds from whatever source they may be, and to work in an assistive role. And so then it looks like the challenge is, what are the methods and channels by which staff is able to get that information out and to be of assistance to the multifamily property owners? And some of the examples I heard were existing communication channels and Nextdoor as being one of them, things like that. But I wonder, can a more active program be proposed? Something that maybe along the lines of how you found out there are 450 multifamily property owners, and if they have an association, or if the city has a licensing program, then they would have the addresses in other cities of all those property owners who own those multifamily properties. And I know in the city of Alameda has a licensing program for rentals, and so people have to buy a license to operate a rental property. And so there's interaction between property owners and the city every year. And I'm wondering, are there mechanisms where Menlo Park is interacting with property owners that can be used as a channel to convey to them this opportunity?
Rebecca or Candace, can either of you, do you know the answer to Tom's question?
So I do know we don't have a licensing kind of program. That is something that is specific to certain geographic areas, particularly in the East Bay. They have many other programs too, to try to encourage environmental practices. So we don't have that at this time. And to set one up is, it does take a bit of time to do that and resources. So, and I think for the other methods that we have, I mean, and Candace can speak to this too, but trying to get a hold of the property owners was a real struggle. I mean, we definitely wanted to talk to more than 20 people, but they were not as interested, just to be frank on that point. And I think even the survey results that were provided from the clean tech that I got from Commissioner London and Gillard really showed that a lot of property owners think that it's hard to manage such a project. That's really a big barrier. The other big barrier is that they don't see a return on investment. And so I think trying to communicate that, it needs to be done probably on a very personal level that we just don't have access to. I mean, the other options that we have, we can mail postcards to the property owners to let them know about the incentives. That would be something that could be done that is extra. And then kind of point them in the right direction.
So just really quick, just to add on to what Rebecca was saying, I just want to make it super clear so that you understand what staff is kind of working with. The only contact list that city staff maintains for property owners is the owner's address. So that's our main form of contact, would be mailers or some sort of letter mailed to their address. There is no email contact or phone number list that is maintained, just to let you know.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gaylord, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering, Rebecca, you said you had trouble reaching them, or they didn't want to talk, but out of the 20 that were called, 7 replied. That's actually not bad. But maybe you meant that finding the phone number was really hard.
Well, I can let Candace speak to that. I think it's a little bit more in trying to engage them in something that they may not initially really be interested in. But because Candace did let them know about the incentives as she was talking to them as well. And the response I believe that she got was, "Thank you for letting me know. I'll contact you, or I'll contact PC."
I just wanted to interject for 1 second because I was confused. I couldn't tell, Josie, if you were asking about the access to being able to contact them or to the conversations themselves?
You know,
Does that make sense?
I was more thinking there was a disconnect between something that Rebecca said and something that Candace said. Candace said that she called 20 and was able to speak to 7. And then Rebecca was saying, I thought, and maybe I misunderstood, that that there was a lot of outreach and not many people responded. And to me, 7 out of 20 isn't bad, actually.
So maybe if I could give you more information about the kind of the survey and how it transpired, it would be a little bit more clear. So to your point, Josie, actually getting the contact information was a hurdle into itself. So kind of compiling that list of 20 numbers to call was an undertaking unto itself. And then when I began to call them, I didn't call them once, it was a number of calls, and the person that did provide responses they weren't necessarily expansive. Not all conversations were created equal, if that makes sense, because it was more of that like anthropological interview style where I was trying to be as engaging as possible to encourage them to provide as much information as possible. So while yes, 7 did provide responses, the responses could be curt, simple yes, no, thank you, I'm not interested, 1 minute phone calls, to I think the longest I had was something like 15 minutes. And I had what I thought was a really engaged property member. And I told her, if you'd, property manager, she wasn't even an owner, property manager, I said, if you provide me with your email, I'd be happy to submit this interest letter on your behalf and keep you apprised of anything upcoming. And she said, you know what, I'll reach out to the property owners because they're the decision makers and I'll let you know. I had absolutely 0 follow-up calls from anybody who provided that kind of response to me. And again, all of the people that I did get to respond, it was highly unusual that they provided a response or even spoke to the same person.
Okay, so got it. So this was all conducted before the executive order, correct? Before the governor's executive order?
It was at the beginning of it. So it was when everything was still very unsure and things were starting to shut down, but hadn't quite.
Sorry. The governor's executive order about 2035.
The N79 2020, perfect. Yes, it was done last.
Okay. So that has shifted. I mean, we have to acknowledge that the state deciding it's not going to sell those cars, new gasoline cars after 2035 it's a pretty major shift. So I think it's important to just acknowledge that we don't know. I would assume that there's kind of higher awareness among building owners now, since it's just been, it's a big move by the governor and in the press. So building, the renters and the building owners would be more likely to be aware of that change coming. And so their interest in this is likely to have shifted somewhat. We don't know how much, right? But I just want to clarify the timing of that.
Yes, it was last spring.
So I have another question. There's a new thing that's come up on my radar, and I know we've been in touch about it, but I didn't hear any follow-up about this. Janelle and I both are aware of companies that are offering services now where they will come into a multifamily building, install the chargers, and different sort of business models, but either the building owners can own it and then charge like a small premium on the whatever the user pays. So it's the electricity cost plus some sort of premium that then helps pay back the capital cost for the building owner. So I'm aware of that. And then I'm aware of other programs where the third party, like a Tesla, I think this was the way they were organizing it, where they actually maybe still own the charger and they get paid back over time. But anyway, so these are new since you did your study, new to me and seemed pretty new on the market. That seems like it really could change this whole situation and really increase market penetration. And I just wonder how much do we know about those?
about the private companies installing and multifamily properties and then providing different ownership models. We're aware of them. Anecdotally, we spoke to Electrify America about providing level 3 charging in a public parking space. And they shared with us their struggle to engage multifamily property owners because there is a perception from the multi-property owners that they have interfaced with as a private company that the installation of charging infrastructure is not worth the administrative headache. So they have a lot of difficulty capturing property owners. They focus, Electrify America, for this anecdote, did focus primarily on commercials, but they were trying to shift to multifamily because there are specific targets that they need to reach, and they were open to it. The problem that they were coming in across is similar to the barriers that I was coming across when I was surveying the property owners. It's property owners in this area, and I'm not sure if this is still true, but property owners in this area have a very high resistance to improvements that may impact total parking spaces or just cause any sort of bureaucratic or administrative headache or construction on their properties. There is, from what I understand, and from the conversations I've had and the anecdotes I've heard from private contractors like Electrify America who have reached out to these property owners, there is resistance to make these improvements because their properties are worth so much and the interest to rent them is so high that there is very little incentive to engage. So we are aware of these private company programs. We haven't done a ton of analysis to see how it would impact those long-term equity issues that were identified, especially cost to those residents, because I'd hate to promote a solution that would result in them paying more than a property owner installing it and providing it kind of at cost. So totally aware that they're available. More analysis is necessary is what I would suggest.
So I don't think it's realistic, Candace. I don't think it's realistic for someone to provide, if you mean at cost, meaning just the cost of the electricity, because even like in my house, I have to pay $2,000 to get the wiring done. And so that capital cost needs to be amortized. And so the renter has to pay a part of that. I would, I mean, I don't think it's realistic.
Well, I would include that in the cost.
Oh, okay.
I would include that in the cost. For example, I mean, the city currently doesn't charge for charging, but the charging studies that we've done, we've included the cost of installation as part of the cost recovery.
Right. Okay.
So when I say at cost, I don't mean just what they're using, but hopefully it would come to a point where they reached, the return on investment, and it would just be the energy that they're consuming.
So thank you. So I want to try to focus the group just a little bit on our goal for this agenda item, I believe, is to, so what we had recommended to council back in October was not moved forward with. And now this is another, this is more information with the information and the kind of recommendation that the staff report suggests. And so I just want to bring back for us that I think our goal out of this conversation is to have a conversation about where do we stand as a commission on recommendation to council. But it's not necessarily a time to have a detailed conversation about solutions, but I know that sometimes those two things go hand in hand. And then I have Tom's hand raised and then Deb. So Tom, do you want to go first and then Deb?
Thank you, Chair Price. It is really hard to avoid talking about potential solutions when I think our charge here is to provide our advice to council. So there's certain things I want to check with staff about in order to provide the advice to council. But there is a, in my reading of the staff report we saw, it took a pretty passive approach to what staff was proposing to do. It did not emphasize reaching out to encourage participation with the incentives or to work with the building owners about the incentives. It appeared to me to be looking at monitoring what happens, standing back and recording what happens in the absence of intervention. And so that's not the approach I'd like. I like that Candace's presentation mentioned being more active about it. And so, maybe some of the ways to look at being more active that we could advise council about would be, if we were to suggest asking the council to advise staff to see if they can look at property tax records that the county may have that would help identify the, addresses or other information to contact building owners. And also Menlo Park has a housing commission, which I imagine could be useful in reaching out to building owners or to raising the issue about this thing. And then the other thing is that folks weren't that interested in participating in the survey when they didn't know there might be another shoe that may drop. Meaning, if you're not taking us up on incentives, are you ready to wait for the ordinance that might require putting them in regardless of the existence of incentives? And so trying to let people know that this is a good time to be looking at it and getting involved, because our next step isn't as useful to you as this step.
Thank you, Tom. And Deb.
Yeah, I was just kind of as listening to the conversation. I mean, I really think what Candace has said is very accurate. I think there is a low incentive for these property owners to move forward. I don't think any bit of calling and, more of Candace and, within reason, right? Obviously to incentivize as much, like to get the word out as much as possible. But I think really, it seems to me like what needs to happen is that we show that the incentive doesn't really work. Like, because if that's what's being asked and it's just not going to be a fit, I mean, potentially, right? So then that would be more of an argument to go back, because I thought I heard a sort of time frame of try the incentives out for, and I thought you said a period of 6 months. I could be wrong on that, but within reason, you could certainly send out some flyers, maybe make a few phone calls, maybe have a couple workshops or whatever. But I certainly nobody expects you to do this vast emailing or phone campaign, because I do think those hurdles are very spot on. And while we see it as like, oh my God, in 2035 we're going to be all new cars will be electric. The property owners are very short term in their thinking. So 2035 for them is like, we just have to get our heads into it, like somebody who's managing a property. And when I was living in an apartment, I know that the administrative issue, I can speak to that because the thing kept breaking down and we kept on having to, bother the property manager. He's probably got like several complaints, and it took about 3 to 4 weeks with them constantly trying to fix it. So I think that there's just everything that Candace said resonated with me. So I bottom line is, I think we're going to have to show that incentives just really don't work in this market, like for this particular segment, and that it's sadly, Tom, it's going to probably be more of the stick. And then they could certainly always go for an incentive once they know they're forced to do it. But I just think we have to prove that that's not something that's going to work. That's just my, I don't think any bit of talking about it further is going to solve that in this meeting.
What Deb just said really resonated with me. And I recall the conversation we had originally on this item was around the fact that we did not think the incentives were enough. And that was why we went ahead and said that we would recommend more of something like an ordinance. And then council did not want to go in that direction. So I think if it's me, what I would like to see is how do we show that the incentives don't work the fastest? If we're surprised and they work and every other piece of information we had was wrong, awesome, great. If everybody converts because they're all excited, great. But how do we make sure that we're on the shortest timeline possible to vet the fact that they may not work? Because any delay in that is going to delay our ability to reach the neutrality goals that we set. And I think that's what, at least for me, that to me was the hardest part about this coming back to us, is that we all want to hit that goal. The city committed to that goal. How do we make sure our actions align with that goal? Because in my opinion, not taking the ordinance is not aligned with that goal. So that's where I stand. And Janelle's hand is up. Janelle.
Thank you. So I was kind of thinking about what Tom said, and just thinking that I'd really like to understand better, you know, this is not just a Menlo Park set of incentives. It's been offered to for multi-unit dwellings across all of San Mateo County. So I'd kind of like to know, like, hey, which cities have you know, it's kind of in how you ask, and it might be in piling on some of the programs that, like Josie was talking about, where a company will come in as startup and put the stuff in for you. So what, you know, have there been other cities that have found success rates, and what did they do? I feel like we just are starting to truly understand kind of first how you have to approach this. And second, like, what's missing to make people want to do it? Is it, like Tom said, is it the stick? Is it the fact that you know, somebody really needs to take all the work out of it and just say, look, you know what, if you sign right on this, just click this box and we'll do the whole thing for you, and you're going to make, you know, X 10% extra, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it is, but, you know, I think there's an enormous range of how you could set this thing up so that landlords would want to do it. And I just feel like we should be exploring further what it might take.
Sorry, my mute button. Josie.
Yeah, I would agree with Janelle. I think that, and that's kind of why I was asking about these services and like how much we know about them and how they're structured. And, you know, maybe the 7 or however many will talk to us, find some smaller number and get at some of the issues that Janelle was talking about, right? Like, is it more the effort? Is it more the cost? Because obviously the incentives address the cost. These business models where they basically do it for you address the effort part. I think it would be helpful to understand like what the resistance is before, you know, if the reason council pushed back on this was because politically they think it's like a heavy lift, then I think it helps us to know more about what the resistance is.
Building off of Josie's comment, what would be the method to learn more? I don't know if staff can speak to that or if that's something other commissioners have an answer to, but I think I'd be curious to understand, to address Josie's kind of question and point, is what would the path to understand be? And if it looks like commissioners aren't sure, so Rebecca, if you have any idea of how we could move forward to understand anything more about council's concern, because I think part of it is it's hard to make a recommendation when we don't know what the concern was about the last recommendation we made, because we still are leaning towards what we did last time in many ways, I think, in our language. So I don't know if you can speak to that. And I understand we're putting you on the spot for something that it's difficult because you're the liaison, right? It wasn't necessarily your meeting.
Yeah, so I think, you know, what I understood from the council action is, you know, we wanted to do something in this area to promote the incentives that are there. And what we've done since then is look at, okay, well, what information have we gotten? What responses have we gotten? What is PCE doing, right, in this area? How are they marketing the incentives? And, you know, really trying to make sure that we're using our resources efficiently, because we do have other CAP action items too that we are completing as well, and to kind of sift through and try to get phone numbers of property owners and actually go to their sites I would say it is more resource intensive than probably looking at the policy development itself. That's going to require bodies. And when we have certain criteria around, you know, prevailing wage and other issues of how to hire people in order to do that. And so if that is the recommendation of the EQC, then staff would go ahead and analyze, you know, do you want troops on the ground? Do you want us to go to the sites and talk to the property owners to try to really get to speaking with not just the property manager, but actually the property owners. And so we can take that information and look at it further before we present to council on, you know, what the recommendation is from staff and what the recommendation is from the Environmental Quality Commission. But to be, you know, I mean, Candace has had conversations with PCE. I've had conversations with PCE. They are really putting the muscle behind this to get this out there. And I think Candace's presentation does show that the 4 million isn't, I mean, we're going to get some people involved in it, but it's not going to be the amount that we need to get to carbon neutrality by 2030. And that's what we're working on trying to meet within all of this. And so that was our thinking behind their approach as to these incentives are great. The people who are wanting this, or the tenants are asking for it, and the property owners are researching it, they're going to go out there and they're going to look and scour and figure out how to do this. And the others will just kind of laggard behind to some degree. And I think once we understand kind of how that motivation was, once PCE has some good information of how the incentives were distributed and how many level 1s, I think that will really help inform and give us probably a better policy product in the future so that we can reach carbon neutrality. I think that's a very good strategy to kind of understand. I mean, that's usually what incentives do. They give a lot of information as to, okay, what do we need to do next? And I think it's very valid. I mean, we've seen a few surveys just from Candace and from what was sent from Commissioner London and Gillard that, again, the resistance is the time consumption. And if there are companies that can do that, that's great. You know, and again, I think the property owner is going to seek that out. I mean, I've heard of mobile sources as well. And so I think, you know, kind of understanding that with the incentives and watching what's happening, because it is rapidly changing, is not a bad idea at all. And understanding that PCE is the lead agency in administering and in marketing these programs, and that we are here to amplify those efforts to our community as much as possible. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
I think so. And just to zero in on the amplification element, our channel for amplification would be address-based, like physical address-based, because I also agree with you. It seems like if the idea is to put the staff's energy, that's how I read it, put the staff's energy behind some of the other items in the cap, you wouldn't necessarily then think to recommend something that would be just as intensive, if not more so, for staff. So the channel becomes the mail channel. And so when you say amplify, that's behind the message, is that right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, take what is out there and market it in our own community. Whether it's, like I said, we can do a postcard mailer can be very effective. It doesn't take as much resources to do that. But it is difficult to get the phone numbers because the parcel information we are using, I believe, are the tax records as well. And it's voluntary to put your phone number on the record.
Yeah. Okay. Josie, you look like you.
Yeah, I was just thinking. So I think long-term, the incentives, you know, because you were the $2,000 adding up to 8 million, and all, you know, Menlo Park's 4% would be 160,000. Like, I think that tells me that the incentives are not the answer to this problem. There aren't enough incentives to solve the problem, which is why I think these business models where you deal with the split incentive problem, where you have one owner and then one user, these business models are fixing that, and they're helping amortize the capital costs in a reasonable way. So no one's having like a big upfront. Well, potentially the landlord does if they don't finance it, but it can get paid back. It's not totally just out of pocket to them. One of the concerns I've heard about with this is just talking to people in the community is, well, is that going to force rents to go up? right? And so I think that might be where some of the council, I don't know, but council concerns, and also just, we are looking at doing another really heavy lift type of policy, which is a burnout ordinance, and just doing two at the same time in one community. I mean, it's the right thing to do for the climate, but I'm not an elected official. And I think it might just be more than the electeds are ready to bite off in one year.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a comment in mind? Okay, so I'm going to do my best to summarize kind of what I'm hearing, and then that may either spur discussion or people may feel like they're ready for framing different kinds of motion. So what I've heard from the group is we'd like generally speaking, the group would like to see the city move more in a clearer direction towards the climate neutrality goal. At the same time, we recognize that was more aligned with our previous recommendation around an ordinance, and that the timing may be off on that, right? That's what we heard from council, is not right now. So the question is, how, knowing that we have only physical addresses for people, and what I hear from the group is we'd like to see a way for the community to be more actively engaged in the process. And we think there might be, I know we've talked about this in the past, but an education component, making sure people are aware of the incentives. To Josie's point, making sure they're aware even potentially of other models, like the split model, I'm totally blanking on the name that was shared, but Electrify America, for example. So, but we don't necessarily have a solution yet for that. And I know in the past we've talked about people like ourselves or others who'd wanted to volunteer, but it sounds like there's kind of a few different issues. One is, so far I've heard the group is, I haven't heard anybody opposed to wanting to have more amplification of the incentives. What I've heard in this conversation is a little bit of frustration that there isn't something we can do we are struggling to see what we could do to further move towards the climate neutrality goal with the EV charging in multifamily homes. And so I think that's the remaining question on the table, is what else could we do? And if the ordinance was already pushed out, right? The idea of having an ordinance was pushed out, then what are the options that are on the table? And we've talked about staff calling, but they don't have phone numbers. We just have physical addresses. So that's a little bit, I think, a summary of what I've heard. I don't know if that leads anybody to want to disagree with something I said or add to it. But how do people feel about that summary?
I think it's pretty good. There's one thing that I realized we're missing, because in CAP action number 3, it was multifamily and workplace. And workplace is something we could go after, because I know, like, I have a small business and I have to apply for a business license, and I do have to provide more information for the business license. So, I mean, I feel like that's a whole piece of this that we haven't really, and that's actually could be almost just as valuable from an environmental perspective, more valuable actually, for people to charge at their workplaces during the day. But I don't feel like that one has.
Sorry, it's the second one on the list, right? Of places people charge. It's home and then work and then other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like that one hasn't gotten as much staff attention. And I'm wondering if we could kind of maybe shift some, if we just can't access this community, like do what we can, publish information in the city newsletters and maybe do a mailer, but maybe we can shift more attention to the people where we do have information, which would be the businesses, and trying to promote more there.
I think that's an interesting idea that we haven't talked about. I don't know if Candace or Rebecca can speak to any other information that we might not have in this conversation to address Josie's point, or if we should just continue with the commissioner. But I don't, like, to her point, is it voluntary information that you provide for a business license? Is it not? Where would that information live? And do we have access to gathering that information to be able to reach out to business owners in the city?
So just to answer your question, Commissioner Price, we do have access to the business licenses. I have seen them and I have compiled lists for them. Off the top of my head, unfortunately, I cannot remember what that information includes. I can look into that and get back to you.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you that I'm pretty certain it includes email, because that's how the city corresponds with me about my business license, is via email.
And it strikes me that even, and would workplaces also qualify for the incentives? Because it strikes me, if we're going to do a mailer, would we want to include a broader audience anyway to maximize the opportunity for people to take advantage of any opportunity to electrify?
So all of these incentives are available for public charging. BACMED's new rollout of the charge program, as well as PCE's kind of $4 million to service critical market segments, have been kind of not targeted, but designed to engage more multifamily property owners, because they've done their own analysis and they realize that this is a critical need to get the adoption rates that we need to provide this on-site charging. So they are available to workplaces. I also know that Peninsula Clean Energy, when they were doing their initial marketing, they were doing targeted outreach to larger commercial properties. So I wouldn't say, based on the analysis that I've done and the reason we kind of tack into multifamily, I wouldn't say that workplaces aren't getting the amount of attention and education and outreach. Like there seems to be and appears to be more of a market penetration for that segment, which is why staff kind of focused on that critical market segment that wasn't not getting as much attention. That's the wrong phrase, even though that's what popped into my mind. Getting the same level of engagement. And I think that it's such a complex issue. And we're not looking for kind of the lowest hanging fruit. It's not about putting in more plugs to put in more plugs to have the most plugs. It's about putting the plugs in the right places to make the most impact, I guess, is kind of the approach that we took.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I'm aware of is that there's, and I sent Rebecca and Candace something about this. There's like webinars. There was a webinar through Clean Technica that became available. And I think the title was like, are you a multifamily building owner and wanting to know more? And there were like going to be interviews with, and it may have happened or maybe going to happen, but interviews with owners of multifamily buildings and like how they got charging. And I was suggesting, could we somehow get the word out to multifamily building owners in Menlo Park? And maybe it would be, and if it's already passed, if there's a future, item like this, like through the city's website, to get the word out to multifamily building owners about that type of thing. And again, it might be very small uptake, but I think if council is saying no, not now, I would say it's worth pursuing that type of thing, because even if we get 5 building owners, let's say, who do this, then it will be sort of it'll be known how to do it. And there'll be contractors who then have done it in this area, and we'll be getting the ball rolling.
And I guess in the spirit of getting the ball rolling, like Josie's saying, and I'm not trying to put words in people's mouths, but I know that we've had, we cannot act on behalf of the city, but as individuals, we could commit to wanting to try to find a few business owners, a few, owners of multifamily units to go down this road, to take advantage of this. So I think that's also an option to us as individuals, not necessarily as an active body. But just to keep that in mind too. And I know people have volunteered This would be something if people who've had in the past volunteered are interested in knowing about this and trying to get multifamily homes to be wanting to take this action, we know is a critical climate issue for Menlo Park and could be great. But I know we can't do that as a body, but I just want to mention that as something because we've heard from the community that there's an interest in taking action as an individual to address climate change. And Janelle.
Yeah, sorry, just while we've been on this call, I've corresponded with PCE to ask if there's any shining examples of other cities that have had great luck with this, whether they have contact information and have they been contacting landlords directly or, you know, MUD managers or owners. And we may well be able to provide the contact information, both emails. Yeah, I guess emails mainly is what's missing for the property owners and managers. So I don't know if that'll help, but and I'm happy to take that on in my personal capacity, just as part of like, let's figure this thing out. I mean, I feel like I kind of know the questions that I want to find out the answers to from PCE. And, I can ask BACMED as well. I actually have a call with Rebecca Fisher coming up. So I can make a note to ask as well, but I'm happy to do some like intel gathering.
Thank you. Yes, Josie.
I also am aware that council members have relationships with multifamily building owners because those folks like lobby the council. So, I mean, that may be another, is to come back to council and say, hey, can we come up with a small list of, 10 owners between the, council members who we could survey and, if there are people who have strong opinions who are talking to council members, then they might be people who want to share their opinions.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and it's in the spirit of the get the ball moving, right? So, okay, we're not talking about moving an ordinance forward. The incentives are great, but incentives alone are not enough. And so this is an opportunity to reach out at an individual level to demonstrate the commitment we have to climate neutrality by inviting these specific people we know in the community, right? That the council members know, that we know as individuals, to get a few businesses at least to get the process started. And so could we set a goal of, as a city, having X number of multifamily units? It may be a small number, but again, it's get the ball rolling. So X number of units through relationships and through individual advocacy. Yes, Deb.
Okay, so sorry, this isn't related to the conversation. I just have to apologize because I let Rebecca and Ryan know that I can only stay till 6:30 and it's my time to leave. So I just wanted to say bye to you all and great discussion today. And Ryan, I can always sync up with you after on anything.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
And Janelle.
Sorry, I just forgot to lower my hand.
I was going to say, Janelle, no one really responded to your offer, but I think that would be wonderful. And if you could help in this way, that would be like a huge help, I think, to the city.
Yeah, and I'll just respond that I think that it's important, like, to get the ball rolling. It's not that we have to get every MUD owner to do this. I think we need one success story that we can publicize, and that will definitely help get other MUD owners on board, especially if we can contact them with this success story and just, again, like the kind of how of the communication, how we craft it, how do we make this seem easy peasy, like a no-brainer. They get a halo effect of goodness and environmental forwardness, plus they get money and they don't have to do anything. Like, I just want to work with PCE to figure out, like, okay, how, and BACMED, to say, how can we make this like really a no-brainer for MUD owners? Because you're right, I get it. If I managed an apartment building and somebody said, oh, here, you need to attend this webinar and then fill out this lengthy form, and then you're going to need to oversee a bunch of construction. Does that sound good to you? I just feel like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm not doing that, right? Like, it just got to be easier than that.
Sorry, I think I liked your summary and it made me laugh a little bit. So thank you. So based on where we're at that conversation, how do we think, is somebody hearing something that we could put together as a recommendation? We've there are a couple members we haven't heard a lot from, which is totally fine. But I don't know if you want to share Commissioner Elkins or Commissioner Payne in the conversation before we go down that path, or if you're comfortable starting to think about a motion now.
Yeah, I am comfortable. I've been taking notes and following along, and I'm happy with where we're going.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, this has been a very helpful discussion, both the presentation and all of the discussion, just in terms of giving me a lot of information to think this over from. But yeah, I'm curious now to hear what motions people have to put forward. But this has all been very helpful for me.
Thank you. Well, I'll take a stab and I'll put something forward. What I've heard is, you know, again, I could be wrong, but I feel like at least I agree with the information staff has provided. And I think we would like to invite council to take a step farther. And in the spirit of getting the ball rolling, let's take a more proactive approach at a time monitoring time intensity. So we're not asking staff to go call every single multifamily unit in the city. We're saying, can we come up with, you know, X number, so I'm going to say 10 folks that we want to work on, so we can get at least 1 or 2 converted in the next 6 months or year. So we have not only the incentive data, but then we have some stories, so that as we move forward in the next phase, we have data and examples and Menlo Park multifamily units we can utilize to make whatever policy decisions we make. So we can use those stories to talk about how much it makes a difference in the community, to the renters, et cetera. And to Janelle's point, it's not as hard as you think, right? So that's what I'm hearing. It's not really emotion, but if somebody hears emotion in there, or I can try to summarize it again, but that's what I'm hearing our direction is, and I'd be supportive of that.
Yeah, so maybe could the motion be set a goal of, 10 multifamily property owners, contacting them and having some number of them successfully convert, and maybe working with Janelle or partner organizations with that effort. But I like the idea of sort of setting a goal, and with the idea of within the next, I think 6 months is not too unreasonable, helping them get converted and having some, learning, and then having information to share with others. That wasn't really a motion, but
it's a tough one. I totally agree.
What do you guys think about setting a goal and it be something like 10? And
I personally think that's great. I think you target 10 and a percentage of those, it's going to be more complicated than you thought. And so if you work on 10 and you end up converting, I'm making this up, like 5, that'd be amazing. I would think if we could get to 2, that would be great.
Yeah, I like that. And then I would throw in there asking council members for their contacts of engaged landlords who care about policy. Can we get those contacts?
And I think the other thing I wonder is so we're talking about a different way to amplify. So the city's way to amplify as city staff is we have the mailing list. Nobody's opposed to sending, at least I haven't heard it, postcards out to all of the multifamily units. That's great. What we also want to do is take a more direct personal approach by amplifying the message through where we think that people we have established relationships, we have some established commonality or rapport built, like Candace was talking about in the phone conversation. That's hard to build in a phone conversation. You have that relationship. We'd like to explore those relationships and see if there are people in that group already who we could who we could have really direct conversations about the incentives with and get them to take action over the next 6 months. Because we really would like to have examples, stories, data in order to inform any policy decisions moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Rebecca, we might have to have some help from you in terms of, has a motion like this been created in the past where we're sort of, our motion is almost, we'd like to call and invite council members to take actions individually. We're not necessarily saying we recommend you direct staff. We're kind of saying we recommend you personally do this, and we're happy to help.
Yeah, I think that is doable to advise council. I mean, it would be voluntary from their end, but that the Environmental Quality Commission thinks that that would make a larger influence on multi-property family owners, that it's very difficult to build that relationship cold calling or through a postcard.
Excellent. Okay. So, and Janelle, is your hand? Okay, Janelle.
Yeah, it's up. Okay, and then I even think like before the postcard is written, kind of the marketing angle has to be considered. So what is the content that's going to feel compelling? It is almost like an advertisement. And so if it's, hey, here's something that's going to be an enormous hassle for you, they're not going to respond. So it almost has to be like, I don't know, I'm really hoping PCE gets back to me or BACMed and says, oh yes, here's how you have to present it. Otherwise it's a total bust. But when we said it this way, people wanted it, or if you only target these particular MUDs, then that's going to work, but the smaller ones, no, or I don't know what the learnings are, but I feel like, it's been out there for a little while and maybe there are some learnings, but they should be incorporated into the design of any sort of a postcard. And I don't even know if we're able to advise the city to send a postcard. That I'm not sure that that's within the scope of something that we could recommend.
So it sounds like we're sort of proposing a two-pronged approach then. One is the more personal, council for we appreciate your contacts and you reaching out and asking those landlords that talk to you and seem to have, opinions about policy. We'd like for you to contact those folks and see about their willingness to participate, at which point I think staff would take over, right? And we're also maybe suggesting a postcard program, but maybe wait until we hear back from PCE about kind of how it might be structured.
Yeah. And there might be too much granularity. I was saying it just because in the staff report, it talks about amplification, and the channel that staff currently have for amplification on this issue would be essentially a mailer, which, I get the mailers, a lot of them are postcards, which is cool. And they actually work because I'm always like, oh, what is the city trying to communicate to me? It's probably important. But then again, I'm on the commission, so maybe I'm biased. But anyway, so I think if that's what the city is going to do already, I'm not opposed to that. And I haven't, I'm supportive of the staff report. I think what we're saying is, as a commission, we'd like to see another step taken and an amplification that looks a little bit different. And that amplification is of a more personal nature, because we're actually having a call to action that's inviting the council members to volunteer to engage the multifamily unit owners that they know to get involved in the process, so we can have no less than 10 engaged and no less than 2 converted 6 months from now. So maybe that's a motion by, oh my gosh, August? I don't know when 6 months is. July?
Yeah.
August. Okay. By August 31st, last day of August, we have engaged no less than 10 multifamily units at a personal level, and no less than 2 have converted, is the kind of challenge or the call to action we put forward for the council and for ourselves, to say that's our goal. Because those are actually things we can engage people who want to volunteer, and we can engage each other and our networks, and we can have those conversations. So again, motion would be by August 31st, as a volunteer group, the city has engaged no less than 10 multifamily unit owners and no less than 2 have converted, or not converted, have adopted multifamily unit or electric charging at a multifamily unit, because they could own multiple properties, right? So they've added it to at least 2, that 2 exist. So that's a motion. It's a little bit messy, but.
Can I just add to it, or
yeah,
for consideration, that
sure.
we learn more about these new business models, and that
Yes.
become a major focus of whatever reach out we do, because the incentives may be gone, they may not be, enough. So that I think we need to understand more. And I would actually request from staff, like if Candace or whoever's appropriate could learn more about, I know of Tesla, and there was one other one that I think we sent you an email about. I forget the name of it. Janelle may remember, but learn more about these emerging business models and present it to us, because I'd like to be more, have a better understanding, so we can, as we're out in the community, we can talk to people about it.
I think it was maybe electric fish. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Tom.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to add to this motion. Probably not, because it's a big step. What I'm noticing is we keep talking about the narrowness of the channel and how we only have some mailing addresses for property owners. And then my experience in the East Bay is there is a program that heavily engages the city of Alameda with the rental property owners, because they have to have licenses. They don't get to rent property out without a city license. And so then along with that license comes stipulations about what you must do, and things like fire code inspections and other things. And I'm looking at the amount of outreach that needs to happen, and I'm hearing about the large proportion of our population living in rental housing, and I'm wondering if perhaps we should suggest to the council that it consider forming a bigger, broader channel to multifamily property owners, up through and including, if they want, a licensing program that would be self-funded and be an engagement mechanism to help the multifamily properties go in the direction the city needs for the things it needs to provide. The council may want to have the Housing Commission of Menlo Park take a look at that and advise them about whether they think that's a bad idea or a good idea. So, I'm just thinking we're at the start of this, we're realizing we don't have the channel to communicate. And so maybe they need to establish it.
And I think, I wonder too if Tom, so I'm happy to include it in the motion, but this sounds a little bit like a memo from the EQC to City Council, of realizing that through this process that we've been going through, we've realized, like you said, we actually don't have a great way to communicate with this group, and they're a really significant part of our city. And so we wanted to bring council's attention to that and say that, in order to develop that communication, in order to develop that conversation more broadly, we would recommend that they look into widening that channel to beyond just mailing addresses. And that, an example would be what the city of Alameda has done, but there may be others. And it may not be a priority, but I do think letting them know, because I can imagine too that people just aren't aware of this, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think your point is good, that it may make sense to do this via memo, because there can be significant content to try to communicate with the council, and otherwise they may just feel blindsided that this comes as part of a recommendation on charge.
Yeah. I'm trying to also keep notes, so I am listening. I'm sorry if it looks like I'm not.
Yeah, so just to clarify then, that is not, I'm not proposing a friendly amendment to the motion. The motion is still as you proposed.
Okay. So we have go ahead, Josie.
Sorry, just a thought. These people all have accounts, garbage accounts, right? in my garbage account, like, I don't think it can be only paper. Like, I was forced at some point to make it online. I'm just wondering, like, does Recology have this information we need potentially?
Yes.
They may not be able to share it though.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, I've asked for this information before and they won't share it. And I believe
I think
Candace
it's a
has asked that from
GDPR.
PCA. Yeah.
I think with the new laws, I just know this from my work. I'm pretty sure they actually can't. Even if they could have a few years ago, now they can't because of the double opt-in laws. But anyway, yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so have you typed up a motion? You look like you were typing something, Ryan.
I was working on them. I was reminding myself about the memo, but I think, I don't know, Rebecca, did you write down or do you want me to re-say it?
So you can reinstate it, but on my notes, I have, by August 31st, engage no less than 10 multifamily property owners to contact to use the incentives, and have 2 that have converted by the end of that period. And then I have, request that council members individually reach out to those who have relationships with multifamily property owners to take action. And if they can get them engaged, then refer them to staff to help them through the process.
Yes. The only thing I would change is, I didn't know what the right word was. I know convert is not the right word because it's not something they're converting, it's something they don't have. But yes, that is very much, I think, what I said.
Okay, I could say participate in the incentive program.
Perfect.
I'm less, because there may not be incentives. What I just heard is
True.
There aren't incentives. So I've been trying to say this and it's not landing, or I don't know, maybe I'm not being clear. I think we need to get away from this being about incentives, and it needs to be about getting the equipment. And I think actually probably the major way that these folks are going to get this done might be through these business models.
So
yeah,
okay.
I think there, so again, we can do that and analyze that some more. The city can't recommend any companies. We don't have that ability. I mean, we could put out a list of companies that provide that service, but I need to check with the city attorney on specifically marketing. I mean, we usually do that because we have constraints and we want a certain kind of specialist to work with the city or work with community members. But there could be some barriers to that.
So maybe for the, oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking that I agree that we need to not be talking about participating in an incentive program, but talking about installing EV charging. So using the verbs either adding EV charging or the verb installing. And then hopefully there will be incentives, but that's not our problem.
I agree with that. I think incentives, if they are available, could potentially provide a sense of urgency to action in addition to but I think getting access to it through the personal relationship is really important, because otherwise they have a million things to do. This isn't going to be at the top of their list, even if there's an incentive. That's what we've heard and seen. Okay, so modify the motion to speak specifically about, we are trying to amplify the message as it relates to carbon neutrality in the city. And so we're asking the city council and other climate activists in the community to reach out to multifamily unit owners and for us to have information from 10 serious conversations and 2 EV charging installed at multifamily units by August 31st, 2021. That's the motion.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say 2, do you mean 2 entire buildings for all of their residents, or just 2 charging points?
what do we think is the right answer to that question? Because I don't know the answer, but I think it's a spot on question.
You okay? Are you okay? I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
We lost Zoom moment.
Yeah, somebody got hurt.
Like, I would say it's hard to know how many charging ports a landlord decides to put in, and I don't know that we should put a number in at all. It just really, maybe it participates in the incentive program.
Actually, but I think Tom was saying let's get away from participate in incentive program, because we don't know if there's going to be any. We're hearing maybe there's no incentives left. So I think has installed at least one new EV charger.
And so is that installations at 2 properties?
Right.
I think that's what we all kind of meant.
Right. So that ends up being at least 2 level 1 normal household outlets.
Right. At least one new EV charger at 2 properties.
Yeah, Tom, we're setting the bar. It sounds like you're thinking we're setting the bar pretty low. But you know, there's a lot that goes with that.
Yeah, and it's 6 months, and
there's no way for us to know who was going to participate and how many units are involved and who this hypothetical owner is. So it's hard to get a number.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying the bar is too low. I'm just level setting for what I think could satisfy it. 2 level 1 chargers on different properties could satisfy those words.
I'm reading between the lines that Tom is going to go in the middle of the night and install these 2 things and just get it done with.
Okay, so can we walk back through the memo? So I'm going to try to keep a little extra notes to help Rebecca out. So I just want to walk back through the memo to make sure I have it, or sorry, not the memo, the motion. So it's by August 31st, 2021, we will, can you say what you just said again? Sorry.
Oh, wait,
I have, I think I had what I had, and then I was trying to modify based on what Tom was saying. So we will have had, and that's where I'm confused is, are we still talking about this sort of formal conversation with 10 multifamily unit owners and then have at least 1 new EV charger installed at 2 properties? That's the part I captured from Tom. Is that the whole thing? Okay. So we will have had at least 10 formal conversations and at least 1 new EV charger at 2 properties installed. All right, we got it. So that is the motion that I put forward.
And sorry, ahead, can you just add to the motion? And we are requesting support from council in providing contacts.
Yeah.
To engaged multifamily building owners. Okay, and then I second the motion.
Okay, so with support from council through contacts with multifamily unit owners, by August 31st, 2021, we'll have had at least 10 formal conversations and at least 1 new EV charger at 2 properties will be installed. All right, we got it. We got a motion and it's been seconded. And I wrote it down, Rebecca.
Okay, great.
No problem.
All right, so roll call here. Commissioner London?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, I am unmuted. Okay.
Yeah. Commissioner Elkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Cabot?
Yes.
Commissioner Payne?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Commissioner Gillard?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of that part of our agenda. And we, sorry, Janelle, sorry.
Just because we're in kind of the heat of the moment here, can I just quickly review? I already got a response back from Peninsula Clean Energy. So just to have this in mind as we move forward. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay. So I asked, did PCE directly contact MUD owners to inform them of the PCE and Cal EVIP incentives, or just post general ads and notifications? And is there any funding left of the original $4 million from PCE? Okay, so he writes back, yes to all these questions. We've been doing general outreach and outreach to MUD operators. In fact, we just started doing some assessments. And at our first MUD project, we got the MUD owner to upgrade their original request of 4 level 2 ports to 2 level 2 ports and 15 level 1 ports, providing charging to all residents. There is still money available in PCE's component of the program, so any promotion or outreach that you do to direct interested MUD owners to our program would be greatly appreciated. BACMed is tricky since it's an application-based process, but possible. If a MUD operator fills out our intake form and he provides a link, we can get started and see what combination of funds would work best. So it sounds like the goal is to get them to fill out an intake form.
Okay, that's helpful to know for these conversations that we're going to be having between now and August. Okay, that's great. Thank you. And this does bring us to the end. It actually is a nice transition because the next part of our agenda is about updates and reports. So I had a couple of updates to share, and I don't know if others do as well, but I can start. Oh, sorry, I guess, do we have any public comment on this agenda item, Ms. Lucky? I don't see any hands raised. So for members of the public, if you'd like to give public comment, then you would raise your hand right now and you'll be recognized by staff and the committee for being able to give your public comment. So please raise your hand now in the Zoom meeting if you'd like to give public comment. I don't see any hands raised. So I'm gonna turn the meeting back to commissioners to give updates, and I'm gonna just share a couple. So one is we had somebody who wrote in asking about trash pickup in the creek, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that I had referred that person to Joanna, because she handles most of our a lot of our staff liaison work that's on our not on climate, and she had directed that person to the correct point of contact. So that's taken care of. If anybody else, no need to reply with action. That person has the right contact information. It turns out it's under East Palo Alto's jurisdiction. And the other question that I have not heard back on yet was I've had a couple people reach out to me with questions about heritage trees and not knowing what the protocol is if they are interested in understanding if their neighbor is impacting a heritage tree negatively. So I don't have an answer on that yet. I don't know if people are reaching out to multiple individuals, but as soon as I have an answer, I will ask somebody on staff to forward it to everybody. And lastly, I think Rebecca did forward my what I learned from Councilmember and Mayor Drew Combs, who's on the JPA board, about the Creek project. And I think Deb did attend part of the meeting. I had told Deb I was going to, and then I was unable to due to my son. But what I believe, what I learned from Councilmember Combs, first of all, was that I was able to supply him with the public commenters' names of everybody who spoke about their concerns about the creek and the heritage trees. And I was able to give that information to Councilmember Combs, who said that he would then reach out to those individuals with more information. So I think that was helpful for public comment. In addition to that, he also shared with me that this project is slated to begin in 2024, but that the EIR is not is potentially being litigated. And I understand there's a sequencing to the projects. So it's not clear if the project is going to start in 2024. So I was not going to agendize it until we had a clarity on the process by which this project would be reviewed, because my understanding is it also, the public comments would potentially go to council, and council could then recommend the EQC review the project. So I did let the Mayor Combs know that the EQC had heard a lot about it, that we were interested in learning more about this project, but that I was not planning to agendize it at this time. So that is my update on that item. And it looks like we have another update from Commissioner Elkins.
It's not an update, but I just wanted to add on to what you were saying, because I did attend that meeting as well. And
Great.
The actually the March 2nd meeting will be the one that focuses on trees. So if anybody's interested in listening to that, you didn't miss anything yet, really.
Thank you. I hope to go to that meeting or listen.
Yes.
I say go, but you know, you don't really go anywhere. Zoom. Did anybody else have any other updates? Yes, Josie.
So yeah, Tom and I have been doing a lot of work on the CAP action number 1. And I would like an opportunity to, and this sounds a little weird, like I want to present to you all, but we've done a lot of work putting together a model showing how people can electrify their homes, and if they do it smartly, can actually and can finance it and make it so that it's not sort of like no money down, no extra money, just exactly what they've been paying for their utilities, and not have to do upfront capital costs. So anyway, we're trying to, the question we asked was, if the city passes this ordinance, you know, we don't want it to be like a financial burden to anyone. And so is that possible? So we've been working for months and trying to pull all these different pieces together, and we found ways that, yes, it can be done. So I would love for the committee to have a, you know, we'd like to get the input, and I'd love for the rest of the commission to see this and to ask questions and to become familiar with it. Because it is a little bit like not what people are expecting to hear about this issue. They're thinking it's going to cost a lot of money and I can't afford it, et cetera. So that's one. So I'd like to, I guess, request that that be a future agenda item. Hopefully next month if possible. And so Tom and I have been presenting to different groups. And so it's weird that we haven't presented to you guys. We presented to a CCAG group, which is the City and Council of City and County Governments. I don't know, City and County Government Association, something like that. Anyway, a subcommittee that's focused on climate, we presented to them. And I presented at another workshop on decarbonization, and we're starting to present and getting a lot of good questions, and we're continuing to refine the model. But anyway, the news is good. The news is this can be done affordably in a way that it's not a burden, and it involves including solar and potentially batteries, which interestingly in many scenarios pay for themselves. So you actually have that reliability, which people are worried about. You know, if they go all electric, are they going to be without power in a power shutoff a la Texas? And so the good news is actually, no, you can add a battery and it doesn't cost extra. And we can show kind of how that works. And you get that reliability. So it's really good news. And Tom and I also met with Hortensia, and I'm not sure her last name, but she runs an organization called, I think, El Concilio, where they do energy retrofits for low-income folks today. We met with her today to sort of understand better what are the, because what we're showing will work sort of for the income-wise for the top 2/3 of Menlo Park residents, people who have decent credit, and then there's another third who this would be a struggle in different ways. So lower income folks who might be on like a CARES program through PG&E. So it's helpful to meet with Hortensia to sort of understand what are the issues there, and kind of present to her, if it could be done this way, do you think people would be amenable to it? And she was pretty positive. So I think we're kind of coming to a place where I can see I can see good solutions. We've also met with Peninsula Clean Energy about financing. So anyway, it's all kind of coming together in a really nice way, but it'd be a good time for the commission to see it.
That sounds great. I put it down. That's exciting. And I'm excited to learn more about the NGO that you mentioned as well, because that's, the equity issues are super important. Yes, Tom.
Building upon what Josie just raised, and thinking about the need to start having more community meetings about the climate problem and our responses to it. I know our EQC meetings, they feel very formal, where the public comment period is constrained to just a small part for each agenda item. But I was wondering if it would be possible to have a part of the meeting where there can be back and forth with the public, more about what's going on, with efforts to work on the climate, what ideas they have, what they're looking at, what concerns them, what we found about things that concern them, so that there can be some discussion and forward progress on learning, what residents are concerned about, or businesses, and what policy efforts are being considered. And so one idea might be to take that presentation that Josie is talking about and to, make it in a segment of this meeting with a defined amount of time available to have discussion, including public discussion.
I think that's a good question. I will, Janelle and I will take that to Rebecca, because I think she has something happening at home right now. So I'm trying to take a little bit over. And I think we will ask her, because I think, and this has come up before for us, where so we've talked about the public engagement issue and the public engagement side that the city needs to do in a way that the city needs to do it, right? Because that's part of the city process. And it can be different from the opportunity to listen to and learn with and share information with city residents, just as people who are passionate about climate, right? And so how do we make sure that we're able to have both of those scenarios going on, and that we're not in any way violating our kind of role or any rules that govern us as commissioners, but that we're still able to engage people more as a conversation, which is what I hear Tom saying.
Right. So, and I could see how it, to avoid confusion, it may be better to have it happen outside of the scheduled event of our EQC meetings, but on some other day of the week.
So I think that's what I'll take that to ask Rebecca about. And Janelle, we can talk to Rebecca about it when we have our call for agenda setting for March. Thank you for raising that. Are there any other items before we close out our meeting?
I guess this isn't really an update, but it's a question or request. Could the commission get more, like we've talked about number 3, cap action number 3, but could we get some more regular updates on, I know there's a lot going on cap action number 1, and Tom and I know some, but I think it would be good to get some more regular updates from staff, so everyone on the commission kind of understands, because there's some potentially big things that on the cap.
And I know when Rebecca and I talked about it recently, we talked about the other agenda item that'll come up is once council finalizes, which I think they're closer to doing now. They weren't when we spoke about the agenda with Janelle, but now I think they are closer to what are the priorities for the year and sharing that out a little bit. But that's another area, because I think there were some items that came up. I think it may have been around a leaf blower ordinance and things like that may get referred to us if those are some of the priorities. So that's another item that may come onto the agenda. And Josie, to your point, this also, just what have we done so far on the cap, and let's talk about that. So those are the things that I'm aware of. Yes, Tom.
Just as another report, I did see in the city council agenda a staff report from staff about CAP Action 1, and it was looking at stretching the timeline out for achieving CAP Action 1. And that was I think the first place I had seen it. And so I'm thinking, staff is advising council about the need to change the timeline. And my thought was, should EQC also take a look at that? I don't want to stretch any process out longer than it needs to be. I'll tip my hand and say I'm in favor of acting quickly on the climate and trying to get ahead of it. But anyway, it was interesting to see something going to the council about changing the time frame of something we've been advising, and to see it there first.
Yep. And I think, so I don't know where things finally landed, but I was a little concerned because I had also heard that, and my understanding from looking at things was that climate hadn't been in the top priorities, but I think now that it is. So I think, we can also, I think something for us to consider as individual commissioners and as a group, and that's what I'm really excited about the motion we passed tonight, is how can we keep reminding council, keep reminding the community that urgent action is needed, and we will take it every way that we can, whether it's individual, multifamily unit dwelling owners adding EV charging, or if it's reminding that we need to make sure that we're not extending the timeline for building electrification any longer than we absolutely have to, and what is it that we could do to tighten that up. So I think that's important. And what I also hear from you, Tom, is saying, is that a memo that we could have seen before it went to council? And I think that's a very fair question. So I will absolutely ask that question.
Yeah, and actually I will say, as the council is setting priorities, it may be the sense that we passed this great cap, and so we don't really need to talk about it. There's not a lot of public comment coming in actually about climate right now. So there's a lot of public comment coming in about quiet zones around the railways and some things about leaf blowers. But if it's something that you can, I wrote a letter. It took me a while, but I did. If they delayed the discussing of the priorities it got too late at the last meeting. So I don't know what the new date is, but it's not too late for you individually to send a letter to council, if you really want to see them focus on this. I'm a little concerned that they're losing the focus on it a little bit.
I'm a little concerned too. Do we want to direct me to do something on behalf of the EQC? Is that something that the group is interested in? Because, and Leah, I don't remember if you've been here for this or not, but the chair is the only person, in absence of the chair, the vice chair, who can speak on behalf of the EQC to council. Everyone else can write, but you have to write as an individual citizen. I wouldn't write without direction from the EQC, but if that's something that there's an interest in, I can remind council using one of the past memos and language that we've used in the past about, reminding them we passed the, sorry, my brain stops working now.
Pass the cap in July.
Yeah, pass the cap in July. And that it's, passing it's great, but actually meeting it is the more important factor.
I would support that.
Okay. I see a lot of heads nodding, and I don't think it's something we have to have a motion on, so I would
support that, and also everyone individually who cares about it. Please don't miss the opportunity. It's just an important time as they set priorities and budget.
Tell other people, like if you're inclined, and like Josie said, if this is what you care about, tell other people that also care about it to make sure that they reach out as well, because it really makes a big difference. And that's, the council's there to try to figure out what people care about. And so if it's something we care about, we should tell them.
Yeah, numbers matter.
I have this feeling that with Biden being elected and talking a lot about climate, everyone thinks like, oh, this is going to be dealt with at the federal level. But the reality is the federal government can only do so much. And the federal government has no jurisdiction over buildings in Menlo Park. The only entity that really has jurisdiction over that is the city.
And the bold part of the Biden plan is to get us to where PCE got us to a couple of years ago. So
it's not bold for us. It may be bold for others.
It's needed. It's a great stepping stone.
Yeah. Janelle?
Yeah, so just to remind everybody, there's something that's really, I think, a very important role of this body. And Leah, since you're new, especially to let you know about it, but it used to be, and Rebecca, I don't know if you're there, but maybe you could do this again, is when there's an important matter coming up before the city council that we might want to give individual input on and or rally all of our friends to do that. Rebecca, or I get mine from Diane Bailey, will send me like a heads up, because sometimes I'm not paying enough attention, like, hey, city council's going to be considering priorities. Looks like climate's not on there. Could you do a blast? And I will literally like just blast all my friends with a super easy call to action. Can you take 2 minutes to write this message and send it to, and I put the email address in, and it just says, please prioritize climate action. And then anything else, I just let that be, you know, done, because my friends are busy. And if they want to just write that and send it, it's going to take them 2 minutes. And then I'll put more of the detail below if they want to learn more about what exactly is going on. And because of the Brown Act, I can't share that with you guys. But, you know, Rebecca or Candace can kind of put out an alert that this is coming up. And you guys all know you can actually see what comments are being submitted to the city council, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can always look and see like, oh, holy moly, there's like, you know, 200 about, I don't know, what some other like thing that's, we feel like,
housing.
You know, it's taking up all the air in the room. Right. And there's only 5 people writing about prioritizing climate action. And it's your chance to tell your friends, to have them, their kids, their aunts and uncles, their parents, everybody just write in with a super simple message, because the city council does kind of, you know, I don't know if they actually count them, but they look at how many. So they kind of do count them. I don't know. Anyone can feel free to correct me. I may have wrong information, but my understanding is that's kind of how it works.
I think it's like amplification, right? It's top of mind. And I think, and if the information is correct, I think sometimes there can be misinformation, but I think when the information is correct and people are commenting on it, that has a lot of meaning. I think that's fair. Thank you.
Sure.
So I took the action item to have a memo from the EQC on the importance of climate being in the top priorities for the city. So I can take that on, and I'll utilize the past memos that we've sent in the past.
Yeah, and I liked your sort of focusing on, it was great to pass it. Now let's actually implement it, because that's the harder part, but the more important part.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Thank you.
talk, but can you walk the walk?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, wonderful. Does anybody else have anything before we conclude, or is that the end of the updates?
I just have to ask, how are the babies doing? James, Ryan, everybody's babies doing okay?
How's your baby, James?
He's doing great. He's been at daycare for almost a month now. And yeah, he seems to love it. So yeah. I really recommend Pinecone if you're thinking about daycare at some point in the future. But yeah, he's great. You know, he's smiling, laughing, he's happy. He's at the perfect stage where he loves all his toys, so you can sit him down and he'll play with them, but he can't quite crawl yet, so you can still go off and do other things. I think that'll end pretty soon though. So he looks like he's about to start crawling any minute now.
That's so cute. You know, Bodhi's quite a bit younger in baby world, so he's not crawling or close to it, but he does smile and laugh, and yeah, he's doing great. It's crazy how much he changes, like, you know, every day, every week. And but he's super cute. I think he may be in the Menlo Spark meeting right now, if that's meeting still going on. But yeah, he's doing great. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, enjoy every week, because yeah, the next week it's totally different.
Yeah, it's super crazy. And I think about it all the time now with like phones, you know, because when I was a kid, you didn't have this ability to take unlimited pictures. But now it's like, if you scroll through your phone, you can literally like watch his face change, like a, you know, those cartoons when you draw and then you flip books like that. It's like a flip book and his face changes. It's really weird.
I was kind of wondering whether or not my phone would recognize, because, you know, it automatically tags the people. And I was like, it's nothing like you used to. Somehow it, maybe it knows. It's the one baby I keep taking pictures of every day. So
well, maybe it's just through that. Yeah.
But as somebody who regrets not doing it, I highly recommend filming them crawling, because I totally forgot, you know, what it was like to have a crawling baby around.
That's a good recommendation. Yes, I will do that.
Ryan, if you're not already doing it, I really recommend the 1 second every day app. My wife has been keeping up with it. Like, so it's just like 1 little second of them every single day. You can go and backfill with, you know, live photos or videos you already have, but
you end
up watching it pretty regularly, because
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aww.
Well,
thanks for the updates on the babies, the EQC babies.
Anytime. But yeah, thank you very much. And so we can officially conclude our meeting at 7:25.
Short one.
Yeah. See you guys soon.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.